How's it going, guys? Who here, like me, is the first time you're here to develop Denver? Wow, most of you. Okay. Just to get a read of the room, who here is a developer? Works in code in some way, shape, or form? Most of you. Okay. Any product people who work on the outside or maybe work with coders? How about people who don't work in code at all? So, okay. So, my name is Malcolm, and a year ago this week actually, I started a program called Galvanize and learned how to code. That led me to my current role as an automation engineer at Vertifor. I work on .NET and C# products, and I also write my automation tests in C#. So, this is going to be a high-level overview. With BDD, we will get a little bit into unit tests, but for the most part, this is an introduction to BDD and how it fits into the Agile process. So, just to go over some terms that I'll be using, the customer, that's just basically any client who wants to add a feature to your product or wants to build a product. Stakeholder, I'm going to use this term very generally. You can refer to a product owner, business analyst, project manager, basically someone who interacts with both the customer and the Agile team. At Vertifor, there's a couple of people who do that, so there's an intermediary, but for this purpose, these purposes, I'm going to combine them, and business value. So that's pretty much what it sounds like, what the customer is getting out of the product. I'm also going to use a couple of Agile terms like user story, Scrum team, stuff like that. So, a little bit of a history of behavior-driven development before we get into it. It was invented by someone named Dan North. He was working in test-driven development, and he had a background in Agile, and he was thinking, this test-driven development cycle works really well. Red-green refactor, you know, it's a great way to build software, keeps it focused. How do I bring this across the whole Agile environment? So he created BDD. Do you have any people who just recently started code and learned some really cool new technology in here? In the back? Give me an example.
We have a pretty complex CI/CD pipeline.
CI/CD pipeline. Anyone else? Anyone discovered something really cool that they learned recently, a new library, anything like that?
Cypress guy.
Cypress?
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else? Okay. So, where I was going with that is there's a lot of really cool technologies out there that are really fun to use as developers, but they might or might not deliver a business value to the customer. And BDD helps focus that so you're using the right tools to deliver the most business value to the customer. So, backing up a little bit, back when I was at Galvanize, we had a final project which we called Capstones. And at the time, I went straight from my group project, learning how to merge Git branches, and went right into Capstones. And Kyle Coberly, who you saw speak yesterday, helped run this conference, he was our lead instructor, and he used to run around saying, working features, not branches. And I was a little confused. I just learned what a Git branch was, and so I was looking forward to working with branches. And I asked him, well, what does that really mean? And he explained it to me, and as usually happens when I talk to Kyle, I didn't really listen and comprehend. But so now in my current role with a big company in a scaled Agile environment, BDD really helped me learn what that really meant. And so I'm going to. So BDD is really a way to help keep the business value in mind throughout the development process. I could explain it, but Dan North, who invented it, put it in a tweet for us. So, BDD in a tweet. Using examples at multiple levels to create a shared understanding and surface uncertainty to deliver software that matters. I know that's a lot. I know it's a lot to break down, but let's do that. Examples at multiple levels. So, I have a lot of fun images. This is the only one that's not related to what I'm talking about. So really what that is that if you take a feature, or you take a customer specification, you take something that the customer has requested, you take that and make it a feature, and then you break it down. On the development side, you'll break it down into user stories, or on the testing side, you'll break it down into examples. So you can see this here. This is a handy chart that I found. We take the business goal, or something that the customer wants. Let's take an airline, for example. If they want to implement a frequent flyer program, that's something that we as developers can implement for them on their website. So we would take that feature and break it down into examples. What do we want the frequent flyer program to actually do in our software? And from there, we can break it down even further into executable specifications. And I'll explain more about that in a minute, but those will get broken down into unit tests. Simple things that we can write code against. Can everyone see this? That's a lot of words. But, so here what we basically have the feature that we're trying to implement. In order to encourage travelers to book with flying airlines more frequently, as the Flying High sales manager, I want more travelers to earn frequent flyer points when they fly with us. So that is a business need. They want to gain more customers through a loyalty program. How can we help them do that? So here we have one example. It's called a scenario here. So in the scenario, earning points from an economy flight will eventually help us gain status through the airline and give us more perks like first class or whatever. Then we do that by using what's called Gherkin. So Gherkin, for those of you who are not familiar, uses the given, when, then format. Given sets up the scenario. In this scenario here, it's taking into account that there's a certain distance between Sydney and Melbourne, which is almost 900 kilometers, and that you're a frequent flyer member. That is already established. The when is what you want to do. So what do you want to happen? What's the example that is happening? So when I take that flight, what do I want to happen? And then is the expected result. So we have here is when I take a flight, I share it miles. This is something, I do put this in code, but I write code off of this. But ultimately, this is something that everyone can read. This is plain English. You don't need to know how to code to read this type of language. So, you can break that down a little bit further. What sort of examples do we need out of the frequent flyer program? A frequent flyer should have a first and last name. That's obvious. A new frequent flyer should have a bronze status. That's delivering a business value to the customer that when they sign up, they should feel like they should have some sort of status. Bronze isn't the highest, but it feels like you have something. And a frequent flyer should be able to upgrade to a new frequent flyer status. So as they take flights and earn miles, points, or today, dollars they spend, They should move up, from bronze to silver and get more perks the more they fly, keeping them flying with the airline. Another part of that tweet, shared understanding. Again, I'm going to ask, can everyone read what's at the bottom? So for those of you who can't, it's Leslie saying, I don't understand what that means, but I think I get the context. So I just was on the Denver Dev Slack channel the other day, typed in understand, and this is what came up, and it's perfect. Because really, that's what everyone on the Agile team should understand. Like, not every stakeholder is going to know how to code, and not every developer has a business degree. So it's shared understanding, or using terms that everyone can understand, like that Gherkin language, helps everyone be able to work together and talk about the features and break down the examples and ultimately deliver better software. So those of you who aren't developers can read this. Is there anyone in here who doesn't understand what this is doing? So this is Java, I believe. I've never worked in Java. But it's simple enough, and we use enough common language to make it easy enough for everyone to understand. If a PO or a stakeholder is looking through the code, they shouldn't be able to know exactly what's going on, but they should have a good enough understanding that, a frequent flyer has a name and a frequent flyer number. As they earn status points, eventually they will get a new status. So, and that's something called domain-driven design, which is a separate topic, but basically it means using common language that everyone can understand when you name your variables, your functions, everything along those lines. So I don't know everything, but I know most of what's going on. And so when you use common language, or everyone gets the context but doesn't necessarily understand what's going on, you get a shared understanding between everyone on the Agile team. The stakeholder who's representing the customer, the developer who is writing the actual code, automation engineer like myself. So you can bring up these problems and talk about them in a common language. And then, if need be, the stakeholder can go back to the customer and say, okay, I know you wanted this, but this really can't work. Maybe we can try it this way. Through a collaborative process, make better software. And the last part, the most important part, ultimately, is delivering software that matters. When you develop from the outside in, keep the customer specifications in mind, keep what they want in mind, keep the business value in mind. You're writing more focused code. You're not wasting your time writing code that isn't necessarily going to make it into the final product, and that happens sometimes, but you're more focused on your goals. And you're not shoveling money into a fire. So that delivers more value to the customer because they don't like wasting money. It delivers more value to your company because they don't like wasted man hours. And ultimately, you can deliver software, better software, faster, which is the whole point of Agile. So how does this fit into the Agile process? We have individuals and interactions. This is an abridged version of the Agile Manifesto. By the way, I didn't want to throw everything at you. You can Google it. It's pretty easy. So it places value on the individual developers, stakeholders, test engineers, everyone on the Agile team to help build the software. Working software, you're building it right. You're building what the customer wants. Customer collaboration over contracts. So because you're able to work better with the team, surface that uncertainty, the stakeholder is more easily able to go back to the customer and say, hey, this didn't work, let's try this. Or, we weren't able to do this, what do you want instead? And that leads right into responding to change. So, things pop up. No plan ever goes according to plan. So, throughout the agile process, you have to make changes. So, ultimately, what is BDD? It maintains the business value. You're not writing software that doesn't deliver value to your customer. Using shared language that everyone can understand. It's agile. It's right into the agile process. And ultimately, to oversimplify it, you develop from the outside in. You're listening to what the customer wants and building software for them. Why? Hope that should be obvious. So, customer specifications remain consistent throughout the process. You're not losing sight of what the customer wants. If you're constantly using examples, breaking them down into executable specifications, in the unit tests, you're developing software as close to what the customer wants as you can get. More focused code. You're not writing extra code. Again, you save time, you save the company money, you save the customer money. And no wasted work. So, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you very much. Okay. We have a couple questions.
Yeah. Sorry. So you still use branches as for your Do you still use branches when you push up to GitHub and stuff?
In my current role, we actually do not use GitHub. We use Microsoft's Team Foundation server. But a little bit.
On the previous slides when you have the when, why,
This one?
yes, do you share that with the person that's requesting the, how do you use like that exact text and show to everyone, like the developer, the customer, everyone gets, it's working off that text? Or is
So this is what's called a feature file.
uh-huh.
And the ideal behavior-driven development, agile environment, the stakeholder and the automation engineer would write these specifications for the test together. Sometime in my current role, I write this based off the user story that the product owner gives me. But this is a collaborative process between the QA engineer, the automation engineer,
Internally.
yeah, and the stakeholder. Yeah.
All right.
So you have someone define the tests for you? As opposed to just the developer figuring out, I'm going to test this.
So it's a collaborative process.
Okay.
So when you get the stakeholder talks to the customer, and the customer brings back the feature to the agile team, and they will break that feature down into user stories and examples and executable specifications like this.
So, How are you actually integrating this? You're basically maintaining a separate system or list of, for lack of a better term, user stories and epics to work from?
Yes, so the user stories and epics are more on the development side. This is more on the QA and automation side of tests.
Okay.
So I'm curious about like also team dynamic. I was curious about your team dynamic. You mentioned unit tests. Are you writing unit tests, or are you focusing mainly on like integration tests?
So it's the automation engineer's job, or the QA's job, to develop the test strategy for the whole feature. So that doesn't necessarily mean writing the unit tests themselves, but they will lay out the specifications for the unit tests for the developers. Thank you, guys.